Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to my short story reading project announcement. I put in a Saturday hodgepodge a couple of weeks ago that I really wanted to in 2020 do a series of videos about short stories at the pace of about one a month, where I would read the short story and make a short video, hopefully discussing that short story. And in that Saturday hodgepodge video, I asked people for suggestions, and I got a lot of suggestions, and I want to make it clear right now that I really appreciate those suggestions. And I wanted to make that clear because it's probably going to appear as though I'm following none of your excellent suggestions. You know, there were a lot of things that I wanted to read as a part of this series, and there are a lot of excellent short stories written by a lot of excellent writers that I wanted to include. And you know, when I came up with the idea, I don't think I had any idea of how big the project would actually be. So I think this is going to be a multi-year thing that I do. Sorry, Zelda's pushing me around because she's going to the table. So it'll probably be a multi-year thing that I do. And so what I want to do this year is kind of concentrate on stories and authors that I'm really familiar with for the most part. One of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to make the list representative. Which is far more difficult than I thought it was going to be, and by limiting myself to 12 or so stories a year, it becomes even more difficult. So if you hear my list and feel like it's not really representative, please just trust me that I'm going to keep going in 2021. You know, assuming all things work out well, I'm going to keep going in 2021, and hopefully by the time my list is done, you know, and contains, let's say, 24 videos and 24 short stories, that it is really representative. So, given all that and the size of the project, I decided in this first year of the project I was going to focus exclusively on American writers. I know that would be disappointing to many people, but again, in the next year I will try to include anything but American writers, and primarily kind of American writers who are writing kind of between, you know, let's say 1900 and about 1980. That's kind of the period that I'm looking at with these American writers. And in part I wanted to do that because, as you're probably aware if you watch my channel, my greatest area of strength as a reader is in kind of the early 20th century or the first half of the 20th century American writers and classics. So I wanted to kind of include that group of authors because talking about their works and those kind of things is fun for me. And hopefully it will give lots of people access to these stories because that I'm reading kind of the older stories this year, because what I hope is that by announcing my list of stories that people will read along with me. And since it is a short story, it's not too big of a commitment. So I'm going to list the short stories and the authors I'm going to read now. It's possible I'll give some explanation for why I'm choosing that. It's possible I'll just list the author, and I'll leave the list in the link down below. By the way, if you are interested in short stories, the channel called the Codex Cantina I think does at least one short story a week or a month, and I'll leave a link to their channel down below as well. But anyway, here's my list for the 2020 short story project. And again, keep in mind in 2021 I'm going to go on to more modern writers and to include writers that are not exclusively American. So this month in January, the short story I want to read is called Death in the Woods. It's by Sherwood Anderson. Sherwood Anderson is kind of an early 20th century writer who became most famous for his kind of book of related short stories called Winesburg, Ohio. But for me, Sherwood Anderson's best story, and the one that affected me the most, is called Death in the Woods. So that's the story I'm reading for this month. As a part of this project, I hope to have and to post my video for each of the stories near the end of the month, and I'm just going to arbitrarily choose the day to be the 28th. That the 28th of each month I will post my video about the story. So the story for this month is Death in the Woods by Sherwood Anderson. In February, I'm actually going to do two stories. So in February, I'm going to read Sweat by Zora Neal Hurston, and I'm going to read Red-Headed Baby by Langston Hughes, and I'll do the video about Sweat on February the 14th, Valentine's Day, and then the video about Redheaded Baby on the last day of February. That's February 28th. In March, I want to read A Rose for Emily by William Faulkner. In April, I want to read Hills Like White Elephants by Ernest Hemingway. In May, I want to read The Jilting of Granny Weatherall by Katherine Ann Porter. Porter is a little discussed writer these days, but she had a period of real fame and following, and I think some of her short stories are really good. The Jilting of Granny Weatherall is probably, I think in terms of people my age who went through public schools in the United States, is probably the story you're most likely to be familiar with, so I wanted to cover that one here. Also in June, then I want to read A Good Man is Hard to Find by Flannery O'Connor. In July, I want to read The Worn Path by Eudora Welty. You may notice that there's a slight, somewhat of a focus, and my dogs are fixing to bark. You may notice that there is there are a large number of Southern writers on my list. You know, Southern writers in this time period are among my favorite, so that explains Porter and O'Connor and Welty and Faulkner being on the list. Let's see. So July was A Worn Path by Eudora Welty. August is The Swimmer by John Cheever, which is maybe his most famous story, and John Cheever is best known, I think, for his short stories. In September, I want to read one of my favorite short stories of all time, and that's For Esme with Love and Squalor by J.D. Salinger. In October, I want to read Cathedral by Raymond Carver. In November, The Jockey by Carson McCullers, and then finish off this first year of my short story project by reading a manual for cleaning women by Lucia Berlin. So there you go. Those are the 13 stories I'm going to read this year. I'll put that list in the show notes down below. And please, again, keep in mind that I'm hoping to make the list more inclusive when I continue this project on in 2021. Anyway, hopefully you'll be able to join me in reading some of those stories. I'll put reminders up in my Saturday videos about which story I'm reading for each month in case, so you don't have to keep referring back to this video. But let me know what you think about my list in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.